Hey everybody, Charles here, and if you had day 17 in the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet, guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand, and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own trial. And we're going to get into how that happened. But he's actually, he didn't get kicked out yet, but the truth is, he's now on notice, and at any moment, he could be kicked out of the trial. So here's why that is the case. During the day started with Brianna Bongolan. She is the stylist who was testifying yesterday. She talked about this incident, she says, when Diddy dangled her off of a balcony from 17 stories up, and also talked about drug use and all of that. Well, she was being cross-examined this morning, and the big thing that Diddy's defense was going in on was the timeline. She had testified that this happened on September 26th, 2016, and the defense showed evidence that that Diddy was actually not in LA at that time. He was in New York, and their big thing was, how can he be in two places at once? And they were making the point that you made this up. That was the push that they were making here. And they certainly were making a good impression, I think. It was very clear. If she said the date was the 26th, he's in New York, they have a hotel, the name of the hotel, they know when he checked out on the 29th, could not have been him, and probably making a good point. But Diddy reacted to that, and this is why the judge ended up calling him out and calling out his attorney, warning about these behaviors that Diddy was exhibiting in court. So the moment that this happened, during the cross-examination, the judge says, all right, we're going to take a break from Brianna's cross-examination. The jury leaves the courtroom, and then the judge basically says, hang on a second, Mr. Agnifilo. Mark Agnifilo, of course, Diddy's lead defense attorney. And he said, your client had better knock it off. And if he doesn't, I'm going to have to take extreme measures here. And that could include removing him from the courtroom for the remainder of this trial. What was going on was that, according to the judge, Diddy was looking at jurors. Now, that in and of itself is not any big deal. He's looking around the courtroom, was what's going on. That's not a big deal. But what the judge said he was doing was looking at jurors and nodding in approval of things that were being said in the court, whether it was points that his attorney was making during cross-examination, or maybe it was the fact that Brianna Bongolan didn't have a good answer for why she got the date wrong, and really seemed confused. And Diddy, obviously, that's good for his side. So he's nodding in approval, but apparently he was looking right at one of the jurors while he's doing that. It's not really intimidation, but it could be swaying the jury. If he's looking at a juror, they're hearing certain testimony, hearing points from his lawyers, and he's looking at a juror going like, see, yeah, see, I told you. If he's doing anything like that, that can influence the jury. They also, while the judge did not use the word intimidation, it is possible they could feel intimidated also. Remember, these jurors have heard hours and hours and hours of testimony about how he has allegedly threatened, intimidated people who were close to him, people that he says he loved. So if you're a juror and he's looking at you, why wouldn't you potentially feel intimidated? So that's why the judge made this extreme warning to Diddy. And I got to say, it is extreme. Under the Constitution, every defendant has a right to face their accuser. So Diddy being in court for all of these proceedings is a constitutional right. And if it got to the point where the judge did say, I'm removing you, I'm sure the defense would put up a huge stink about this. I'm not sure how it would turn out, but I would imagine that's why the judge made that stern of a warning, and I'm sure Mark Agnifilo had words for Diddy when they took this break, saying we're playing with fire here. So, and it's really important that this happened when it did, because they came back from the break. There was some more cross-examination, and the whole Breonna timeline thing was sorted out. But we're going to get to what happened after Breonna in just a moment, because that's when victim 2, who is a former girlfriend of Diddy's, took the stand. And you got to imagine that his attorney said to him, you cannot look at the jurors and react to anything she's about to say. So the Breonna thing, let's just clear up this timeline. Did it happen on the 26th? Did she make it up? When they came back from the break, the prosecutors on redirect pointed out that there's a text message from Cassie to Christina Coram. You've heard her name before. She's been described as Diddy's chief of staff. So when they came back from break on redirect, the prosecution is addressing Breonna, and they showed a screen grab of a text message between Cassie and Christina Coram. You've heard her name before. She's been described as Diddy's chief of staff. This screenshot was on September 30th, and it is Cassie describing the whole incident very much the way Breonna did on the stand. So clearly it happened, and clearly Breonna got the date wrong. But the bigger point with the jury is it did happen, right? That he dangled Breonna off this balcony 17 stories up. That's really the important point, and that's what's going to sit with jurors. Now, that's it for Breonna. Then victim number 2, who is testifying under a pseudonym. She has requested anonymity. The government and the judge have granted that. So she is testifying under the pseudonym Jane. Jane is a former girlfriend of Diddy's, and once she got on the stand, she started talking about, in sort of loving terms, how she and Diddy got together. She talked, and this was a moment that definitely drew some laughter. We know from our producers that this drew laughter in the overflow room where people are watching, and there were giggles in court as well. She talked about their nicknames for each other, which included Bert and Ernie. Yes, Sesame Street. I'm not sure, I don't know that I've ever heard of that as a pet names. The Sesame Street reference definitely got some giggles in the courtroom. She said that she was Bert and Diddy was Ernie. That's how they referred to each other. And she also talked about the freak-offs, in particular, the very first time that it happened. And she said that they were in a hotel room, they were watching pornography and sort of talking about fantasies. And she took it as, she said that she took it as them just talking about fantasies. Like he mentioned something about bringing a third person in, and she was like, yeah, that would kind of, yeah, I could be into that. And he's like, all right, cool. Now she goes up, gets up, goes to the bathroom. She said, thinking all along that this was just, you know, sort of pie in the sky. Like maybe we'll do this someday, maybe it'll be a fantasy. She said when she came out of the bathroom, Diddy was on the phone making a phone call to make it happen that night, which was, she said, pretty shocking. But she said she did these things, and why she did it, she says she was in love with him. She wanted to keep him happy. And she also admitted that there was a lot of money in it for her, that there was an allowance that she was getting, an allowance that was up to $20,000 a month. And she said she enjoyed that money. There was one moment where, you know, she's talking about getting this money from Diddy and why she stayed in this. And then another thing that came up with her finances, and there was a noticeable reaction in court, even jurors who sort of reacted to this. And the reason the prosecutors brought this up is because they knew the defense would definitely bring it up on cross-examination. So the other thing that got some visible reaction from people in court, including jurors, was when Jane talked about starting an OnlyFans. Now, she says she actually discussed this with Diddy and told him, look, I don't have any other income. She referred to herself basically her only job being a social media influencer. And so she first went to him with this idea saying, look, I'm thinking about doing this. I've heard friends and other people who are making up to $4 million a year doing this. What do you think? And she testified that Diddy told her, no, you should not do that. So She ultimately did not start the OnlyFans, but certainly there were some eye rolls where people are like, oh, this is where this is going. When court ended today, we hadn't really gotten to anything, she hadn't really gotten to any violence, but it is going to be interesting as this continues, because you got to expect that she's going to have some stories very similar to the things that Cassie talked about. Now, her life in these freak-offs is certainly going to become a big thing, because if the government is going to make their case here to convict him, the jurors are going to want to hear from her that she also felt forced into this, that there was coercion, that she felt like she couldn't leave because under the threat of violence. If she doesn't get to those things, I think the jury is going to say, what's the point of all this? We already know, we've heard from Cassie, we've heard from assistants that he was violent and that he was abusive. How are you going to make the point that he is forcing women to stay in these relationships? And that is the sex trafficking charge. So it is going to be explosive, I think, again tomorrow. Jane is going to have a lot more detail about their relationship. But the takeaway today, and if you're looking for the winner, I got to say it's the prosecution. Because aside from that warning, remember that warning to Diddy that he could be kicked out of the trial, that didn't happen in front of the jury. So they don't know about that. So you can't really factor that into who's a winner or loser. The biggest thing today was whether or not Diddy actually dangled Brianna over this balcony. And in the end, the prosecution presented something that made it clear that it did happen. So I'm going to give this one to the prosecution today. We will see what happens with Jane's testimony tomorrow. She's got to get to a lot of important points here: violence, coercion, all of those things. And then we'll see who the winner and loser is tomorrow.